Hello everyone, welcome back to more tales from Homeowner Associations. In today's video, an HOA Karen prohibits my golden retriever service dog from the community, asserting that my dog is a danger. Let's jump straight into this wild HOA narrative. And the headline story begins like this. So, I have had my service dog, Samson, for 3 years. He provides massive assistance to me because I suffer from multiple sclerosis, and on certain days, I struggle significantly to get around. He is capable of helping me stand and stabilizing me, and he is also able to retrieve specific objects in my house that are located in designated spots and that he has been trained to fetch. It has required a great deal of effort from both of us to reach this point, but after having my wonderful golden retriever for this duration, I feel incredibly grateful for the aid and backing he offers me. I don't feel the need to rely so heavily on others now, particularly my grown children who have their own careers and personal lives to manage. Generally speaking, the residents in my neighborhood are all fond of Samson. They understand that they are not allowed to pet or play with him as they might with a standard dog that is merely a companion animal. However, nobody has ever objected to that. And generally, my complex does not house many pets. I am the sole resident with a dog, aside from a couple down the road who are away most of the time, and their toy poodle fits inside the lady's purse. Besides that, I believe a few individuals own an indoor cat and one guy possesses a budgie. Samson and I go for routine strolls around our community, and I also enjoy spending moments in the backyard, simply taking in the views and noises of nature. Well, roughly 6 months back, a fresh HOA board member moved into the community, and she has been causing Samson and me some grief. It has been a highly tension-filled scenario that wouldn't be simple for anybody. Nevertheless, this stress also worsens my illness, and that has been even harder to handle. Karen is an individual who is extremely fixated on appearances. She is the sort of person who will measure a neighbor's lawn to ensure it is trimmed within the required specifications and gripe if anyone allows their garden to overgrow slightly before tending to it. All in all, Karen is a total pest because she doesn't have a job outside her house and consequently has way too much free time to issue grievances or menace people with monetary penalties. As far as my lawn and garden are concerned, I employ a service that arrives and handles all of this for me. Therefore, it appears Karen needed to locate something different to pester me about. Regrettably, she determined that Samson would be her objective. It appears that Karen despises animals and holds the view that nobody in the HOA should possess any. Since the other pets are seldom observed, Karen focused her attention on Samson because she watches him walk past her house and on the pavement every single day. One afternoon when I returned from my job, there was a letter in my mailbox. The note was signed by Karen in her capacity as an HOA member. The correspondence declared, "On behalf of the HOA, you are hereby granted 10 days to ensure that your animal is removed from our grounds. He is a menace to our community. Not only does he create messes that nobody wishes to view or smell, but his barking is also unbearable. The committee also holds the view that the animal is a risk to public safety within the community. If you fail to adhere to this notification, you will receive a fine and the Humane Society will be contacted to collect your animal. In the interim, your animal is prohibited from all shared spaces in our neighborhood as well as from the footpaths and any other zones where people traverse." What Karen likely did not comprehend was that she was engaging with someone who possessed every legal right to own a service animal. I was also authorized to bring him along with me wherever I traveled. Never had Samson done anything to anybody to cause them to feel endangered. Samson is also instructed to relieve himself in the corner of my yard whenever feasible. And I always bring a special tool with me so I can collect his little deposits and place them in a trash bag if he needs to go when we are away from the house. And even the waste he produces in my yard is appropriately discarded so nobody risks smelling or stepping in it. I considered my choices and composed a letter to the HOA appealing their judgment to ban Samson from shared areas and asking me to remove him. In the correspondence, I clarified that Samson's vest was not merely an ornament. It was something that had been issued to him following a full certification and that he was genuinely trained for my medical requirements. He was not just a simple companion or even an emotional support animal. He was a certified service animal. I endured a lengthy procedure to obtain Samson. After extensive conversations with my physician and my therapist, I had to attend training to learn how to operate with Samson. I needed to combat the injustice of the HOA, not only for my own sake but for anyone else who might ever be in my situation. In my letter, I cited the provisions of the Americans with Disabilities Act as well as the Fair Housing Act. I was knowledgeable about both of them, and I was not going to lose Samson or my residents because Karen didn't care for animals or liked being a bother. The HOA then convened a hearing, and I was required to attend. I left Samson at home for the session, not wishing to provoke any larger problems and hoping that I could easily get the prohibition reversed. I believe that this scenario can be viewed as a misunderstanding. I stated, I obtained the letter regarding my dog. However, nowhere did you note that Samson is a service animal, and consequently, the law is not identical for him as it would be for a companion animal. I require Samson for my well-being. You don't have him with you today, stated Karen. No, I don't, I replied. That is because I am attempting to demonstrate the utmost respect to you by coming here today to argue my case. However, legally, I could have him here in a shared space, and even if you decided to phone the Humane Society, they would be unable to do anything about it. Your dog has been characterized as dangerous, said the president of the HOA. Does it wear a muzzle when you are out? No, I answered. Samson cannot wear a muzzle as he requires his mouth to be able to retrieve items for me. While I walk him on a harness, if I ever require it, I could set him free to perform tasks for me. We cannot allow a dog to just run freely around our neighborhood, said Karen. Especially not one so big or dangerous. Samson is an extremely friendly dog, I said. He is not a threat to the health or safety of anyone. Unlike Karen, who is clearly a threat to the health and safety of everybody. And by the way, guys, if you are also tired of these entitled Karens, please don't forget to like the video and post some angry emojis in the comments if you want to back me up. Anyway, I have heard him growl previously, said Karen. And that was at an adult. What if it were at a child? Or what if he decided to attack, particularly while he was off his harness, or if the defendant couldn't control her animal due to her alleged medical condition? There is nothing alleged about it, I said. Take a look at the note from my doctor. We continued to debate the situation, but ultimately, the HOA board chose to sustain the ban. The anxieties that Karen had instilled in their minds were not simple for me to talk them out of. I left feeling beaten, but knowing that I was still correct and that I needed to strive to maintain my autonomy and have Samson assist me in going about my daily life anywhere that I desired in my neighborhood. When I arrived home, I contacted a disability rights attorney and she informed me that I had a valid case here. My lawyer could discern that I was anxious and troubled by the entire scenario. While I knew that I was correct, having to endure fighting to be accepted with my service dog because I had necessities that justified having Samson with me everywhere was hard. My attorney drafted an extremely comprehensive demand letter asking the HOA to reconsider because otherwise, we would need to go to court. The letter detailed financial penalties that ranged from between $75 to $150,000 depending on the statutes surrounding the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Act. My attorney also declared that if the prohibition was not instantly reversed, under the law there was a potential for personal liability for the board members who voted for the unlawful ban since it violated the regulations of the law that they should have investigated before sustaining this ban. My lawyer requested that I receive a formal apology and that all members of the HOA board undergo formal and compulsory training to learn about housing laws and the Disabilities Act. She asserted that they were negligent in their conduct and had exceeded their functions as a board. The correspondence from my attorney set things immediately in motion with the HOA. An emergency meeting was convened for all members of the HOA, declaring that they had to participate regardless of any potential scheduling clashes. At the emergency session, the ban was overturned. I received a written apology the following day stating that the board had acted rashly out of fear without possessing all the appropriate facts or conducting a full investigation. I could visualize the panic that they experienced knowing how expensive maintaining the ban could be, not just for their association, but for all of them individually. And Samson was once again welcome to go anywhere in the neighborhood. This made me feel incredibly relieved, as I had been restricting the amount of time that I went for a stroll or spent outdoors because of everything that had occurred. I had also been avoiding the common facilities that everyone in the neighborhood had access to because Samson had not been welcome there. The following month, I discovered that Karen had been asked to depart the HOA committee because her actions had placed the other members in danger, because she had lied about Samson's behaviors just to get her own way and had placed everyone in a difficult predicament that could have become much worse. Karen had manufactured a situation that never needed to occur in the first place and had just caused unnecessary stress for everyone involved. And well, I was also asked if I would like to hold a seat on the HOA so that I could assist in educating the board about any issues that arose from things like the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. I accepted, letting the committee know that I would do my utmost to support them in any way that I could and that I would try my best to attend all meetings. However, they were also cognizant that due to my medical issues, there could be occasions when I was not well enough to do more than just my regular day's work. And even then, sometimes I had no option but to call in sick. I had Samson to help me achieve a better quality of life, but that didn't mean that my flare-ups didn't complicate my existence and give me some days when just walking or moving was a struggle. But even on my worst days, I had Samson by my side. In addition to aiding me, he was a source of unceasing companionship and my supporter through any types of trouble or happy moments. And the next one is a brilliant story that is titled, "You Want Me to Do the Job That You Fired Me From?" I don't think so. So, I handle lab administration for a laboratory. My background is not in the subject researched in this lab, but I know the bare minimum, and it does not hinder my work. I labored very hard to reach where I am and have become essential to the lab. And a few months ago, I was placed in a documentation role that also involved dealing with cryogenic storage. Last Friday, a meeting was conducted with everyone except me, which was odd. After the event, a friend on my team informed me that during the session, everyone was told that I would be removed from this role and it would be assigned to someone more knowledgeable on the topic. Obviously, this is hurtful and unprofessional of my manager to not converse with me before this. There is more to this tale in that someone accused me of ruining their experiment and doing something I did not do. So instead of speaking to me at all, my manager punished me for it and sabotaged me to their whole team. My manager has still not spoken to me to formally remove me from this position. Well, towards the conclusion of the day, I received a message from the new untrained individual in this role asking me to perform it for them. Again, at this stage, no one had officially told me it was no longer my duty. Oh, and they needed it completed soon, so another scientist, ironically the one that blamed me, would not have to remain past 6 p.m. I will let you know later. I said I did not. The scientist had to remain several hours longer. Didn't resolve the situation, but it felt good. And the next one is another super petty story, and it is titled "Petty Neighbor Pretends That I Don't Exist and Blasts Loud Obnoxious Music at 7:30 a.m. I just relocated from a very crowded suburban area to the rural marshlands where everyone possesses 3+ acre plots. This is significant to establish the physical distance between myself and the problem. The issue is the family to one side of my land has a plot roughly half my size. My house is at the rear left corner of my lot while theirs is curbside on the front right. I was awakened this morning by a loud thumping. I thought someone was knocking hard on my door because it was relentless and loud as hell. So, I get up, get dressed, and walk outside. Nothing. Then I hear the obnoxiously loud bass of Spanish rap music. The amateur skill level beat that 10 million of those songs all share. 1 2 3 4 boom. Again, our houses are several hundred feet apart. There is no justification for me to be hearing anything from his lot and vice versa. I had previously attempted to introduce myself to these neighbors, and well, the father was mowing the grass a few days ago and I tried to go over to say hi to him. He gave me a dirty look and didn't bother to switch his lawn mower off. This family already disliked me because my builder had to kick his kids off my land and they had been using it to ride dirt bikes and did not stop even when my home construction commenced. At one stage, they littered garbage and toilet paper through their house when it was still being framed. The construction crew lost a day's work to it. There are still clear trails from their property to mine where they rode. But this morning, I went to his door, knocked on it to ask him to turn it down, but they ignored me. So, I took my truck with an upgraded sound system and sub, parked it on our property line, and proceeded to blast Raining Blood by Slayer for 15 minutes. I turned it off 50 minutes ago, and have been relishing my silence ever since. Guess he does not like my music either. The next one is a car malicious compliance story. So this occurred 8 years ago when I was purchasing my first new car. Not just a new-to-me car. I spent a good amount of time researching the options accessible both in terms of other models from other manufacturers and option packages on the car in which I was most interested. So I knew precisely what I wanted coming in the door. In 2014, car dealer websites had not quite reached the level of borderline bait and switch trickery you see these days. So, if a dealer's website stated they had a specific car on the lot at a specific price, they almost certainly did. There were several in the region that matched what I was looking for, one specifically at my existing dealership. This was not a small dealership. It was one of the largest in the Northern Virginia area for this particular brand. I had a reasonably good experience with their service department overall and figured I would give their sales department a chance to shine. That was my first mistake. I arrived on a Wednesday after work. It was early June, so with the mercury being in the upper 90s, I was dressed in a comfortable but still very presentable combination of a polo shirt and khaki shorts. When I entered the sales side of the dealership, I could see what appeared to be all the salespeople in a conference room laughing and joking while taking scissors to the tie of one of the men present. Later, I discovered that was a rite of passage after making your first sale. I waited around for a minute or two as the conference room had glass walls and it would be impossible not to notice me as I am not exactly a small fellow at 6 feet 6 inches tall. When no one came out to greet me, I went up to the receptionist's desk and said, "Hi, I am interested in model of car and there is one in stock I would like to see." Her response without even looking up from her phone was, "Okay." I stood there for another 20 seconds or so and then politely asked, "Would someone be able to show me that car?" This finally prompted her to look up from her phone. She looked me up and down, scoffed a bit, and said she would go and get someone. I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, hoping that things would improve. That was my second mistake. The receptionist returned with what looked like the youngest, most inexperienced salesperson she could find, as evidently I was not worth the time of the more seasoned folks. I explained that I was interested in a car that their website stated they had in stock and provided him with the printout showing the stock number, price, and all other pertinent details. It took him a while to find the car on the lot, but after a brief test drive, I knew it was what I wanted and began the sales process. I had a trade-in which had been primarily serviced by them and for which I already had a written offer from CarMax, so I knew how much I should receive for it. He quoted me just over half of that figure. When I pointed out that I could get several thousand more by taking it to the CarMax just up the road and had a written offer from them for that specific amount, he went and got his sales manager who offered to drive me there and pick me up afterwards, but that they wouldn't match what CarMax offered. I was a bit surprised that they didn't want a nice used car to sell for themselves. 6 years old, top of the line, reasonable mileage, and serviced by them specifically, but again, I cut them more slack than they deserved. When we got to the price, things really fell apart. He quoted me a price that was several thousand higher than what they displayed on their website. When I showed him the printout again with a noticeably lower price, he looked to the sales manager for guidance. The sales manager immediately took the stance that the price listed includes all available rebates and special offers, and you may not qualify for all of them. I was now frustrated and showed them printouts from the other dealers in the area that had a similar price shown and said if they weren't willing to honor the price listed on their website, I would just go to the next closest dealer that had that model in stock at that price. His response sealed the deal for me. "Go ahead, waste your time and go to the competing dealership. We won't hold it against you when you come back here." I told them, "Okay, thank you for your time. I will go to the competing dealership," and got up to leave. No one stopped me and the receptionist said nothing as I walked past her out to the parking lot to drive to the other dealership. When I arrived at the competing dealership, it was already around 8 p.m. as I had spent a fair amount of time at the first dealership and Northern Virginia traffic has never been known for being reasonable. I had a salesperson approach me immediately upon entering the dealership, and I explained, "I have just come from the first dealership and want to buy the particular model of the car. Both of you have that car in stock with the options I want." They wouldn't give it to me at the price shown on their website, though. "If you will, I am ready to sign on the dotted line right now." The salesperson immediately took me to his office, verified that they had the car, and confirmed that yes, the price on their website was accurate, and I could walk out the door with that price. We started the process, and when we got to the trade-in, I further explained how the other dealership tried to lowball me on the trade. He said if I could produce a written offer from CarMax for the price I mentioned, they would match it. I gave him that paperwork, and without any further discussion, he agreed that they would match that, and we moved on to financing. I hadn't gotten this far with the other dealer, but I had already lined up financing through my credit union. He asked if I would be willing to see if his F&I guy could match or beat that figure. I agreed to let him try, and he came back with a rate that was 50 bps lower. Needless to say, I was already very happy with these people, but that definitely sealed the deal. Right as I was finishing the paperwork, the salesperson from the first dealer texted me to ask if they would give me the car at that price. I responded back that they would, and I was finishing up the paperwork at that very moment, and he immediately tried to call me and then texted me saying he would give it to me for $500 less. I responded to his text stating that I had already signed the paperwork and he had lost the sale. Once the paperwork was complete, the exceptionally pleasant and helpful salesperson at my new dealership spent an additional half hour after the dealership had closed for the night running me through some of the features of the car and showing me how the infotainment system worked. This was completely above and beyond what I expected, as I thought I would just be reading the 300-page user manual to figure it out on my own. I drove home that night with my shiny new car, a very happy camper. And then the next day, I decided to rub a little salt in the wounds of the first dealership. So, I drove there straight from the office. For context, I work in the banking industry. And at that point, it was still very much business formal dress. I showed up in my suit with my briefcase and had people falling all over themselves trying to help me, including the receptionist, who clearly remembered who I was midway through me asking for the particular salesperson I dealt with the previous day. She offered me a seat and asked if I wanted some coffee while she went to get him, and I politely said, "No, thank you. I won't be here long." She somewhat quietly, sheepishly responded that she would be back with that salesperson very shortly. There was a couple in the waiting area who seemed a bit displeased that they had been waiting for a salesperson, but I got one the moment I walked in the door. No more than a minute later, the salesperson and his manager came out. The salesperson recognized me with a look of defeat on his face, shook my hand, and asked how I was today. Before I had a chance to respond, the sales manager spoke up to introduce himself as if I hadn't spent an hour and a half with him the previous day. After I reminded him that I was there yesterday, and he had said it would be a waste of time to go to the competing dealer because they would never give me the car I wanted at the price shown on their website, his demeanor very quickly pivoted back to the snotty, rude person I dealt with the previous day. He proceeded to ask, "Well, did they?" with a bit of a sneer. I said nothing but turned to the side and clicked the remote for my new car so their horn would give a few chirps. He said, "Good for you," in a rather curt tone and walked away, leaving the poor salesperson on his own. I shook that salesperson's hand, thanked him for his time, and turned around to leave. The receptionist spoke up as I walked past her and asked in a rather chipper voice if I needed any further assistance. I politely responded that no, the other dealership had provided me exactly what I needed, and I was all set. To make things just a little bit better, as I passed a couple sitting in the waiting area, I saw them exchange looks with each other that seemed to say, "Perhaps we should go to the dealer I mentioned." I said nothing further. I had walked out of the building wearing the grin of a champion. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I have been living in the same neighborhood for about 20 years. In that time, I have seen several HOA presidents come and go, each varying in likability and success. One of them was the worst by far. And she seemed to think that being HOA president gave her certain rights over other people, as if suddenly rules did not actually apply to her, and she could wander around and do anything she wanted. The biggest of these things would be to trespass on people's properties. At first, she would do it under the pretense of official duties, claiming that trees needed to be inspected or there was an anonymous complaint about gutters. Anything she could make up in order to go where she wouldn't have normally been allowed to. The reasons for this were not always clear, but many times she was seen trying to peer into windows. So, my guess is she was mostly just a nosy person, but harmless. When it came to my land in particular, I started to notice a pattern. I have a passion for gardening, and in my yard, I have two separate sections for it. In one, I try and plant some vegetables to varying degrees of success. It is one of the newer hobbies, I will admit, and there is a bit of a learning curve. The other section is where I grow my flowers, and that is the part one I'm much better at. I have a beautiful array of roses and tulips that makes me very happy to tend to and see. I have had many neighbors over the years ask if I would sell them flowers for special occasions, but I always refused. They were never something I wanted to sell or give to other people, just something for myself to enjoy. My husband had his project in the shed and I had my garden. Shortly after the new HOA president started, things in my garden started to seem off. Things from flowers looking walked on to flat out being picked. Vegetables uprooted and footprints in the dirt. Of course, they are sometimes animals, but it was clear this was all being done by a person. I wanted to keep an eye out despite my suspicion and found that I was correct. The HOA president kept wandering into my garden and picking things as she pleased. After the third time I saw her, I ended up going to talk to her. I was pretty blunt and just told her that it was not a community garden and it was on my property. She was not allowed to come into my yard or my garden. She especially did not have permission to pick and take what she wanted because nobody was allowed to do something like that. Even my own husband knew better than to go anywhere near them unless I was asking him for help with something. She did not agree with what I told her and instead claimed she had the right to do so. That the garden was part of the HOA and that meant it had to be open to the community. She also told me that as HOA president, she did not need permission to go onto my property, she could just do so at will. I was not going to let this continue and decided the best course of action was to put up a fence around my garden. This way, nobody could get into it and she would no longer be able to mess around and ruin things. I ended up picking a black iron fence because I felt like it overall fit with the style of my home. Only a day after it was put up, I had the HOA president in my face, screaming that I had no right to keep the garden away from anybody else, that I was clearly violating HOA laws and she was going to take me to jail. She claimed that when she was finished with me, she was going to own my garden and my home. I did not mess around and got a lawyer to defend me against the HOA president and her false claims. I was not sure exactly what part of the rules she was claiming I violated since I never got any official letter in the mail or anything like that, only a lawsuit. This meant we had to prepare for a bunch of different angles that she might have come at us with. The good news was that the rule seemed to be on our side more than hers. When it came to her going on my property without permission, she obviously had no right. It does state in the bylaws that the HOA president has the right to go onto properties to check issues that were raised to them. However, this can only be done with 72-hour notice and the reason for them coming. She had not done any of those things. So, that reason for suing us would go out the window. The fence was a little trickier because I found out there was an entire section just on fencing. She might try and claim that the fence was not allowed because it was not approved in advance by the HOA. Reading deeper, we found that if it came to protecting property and not being used as a personal barrier, such as a property line or decor, then it did not require permission. We saw some other things in there, but I mentioned these two specifically because it ended up being what the HOA lawyers tried to use against me in court. The judge ruled that I had done nothing wrong, building my fence on my property and denying the HOA president access to my garden. I had won my case, but I was not done with her yet. I made it sound easy, but the entire process took about a year and a ton of money just to defend myself. I had a strong case to countersue her, and I was not going to just let that go. She had been caught trespassing, stealing property, destroying property, harassing me, and putting me through the emotional distress of a lawsuit. When the HOA had their case destroyed, it was time for me to go on the offensive. And it didn't take long for them to become afraid. I had pictures showing the damage she had done as well as her claims of having a right to be in the garden. Some of the statements taken directly from her lawsuit against me. That meant she could not turn around and say something else or she would be arrested for lying in court. I showed off the pictures of the destroyed flowers and stories of how long it took me to grow them. That I had asked her to stop and she refused, harassing me that she could do anything she wanted. Plus talking of the stress of a year-long lawsuit that did not need to happen because she must have known I did not break any rules. I won my countersuit against her and the HOA owed me a chunk of money. Most of it went to my lawyer and the rest was just enough for me to get my garden back on track. About 2 months later, she stepped down from her position after other neighbors threatened to also sue for trespassing. To my knowledge, she was the shortest acting HOA president in my time living in this neighborhood. Like I said before, we had some not likable ones in the past, but she had beat all of them by a long shot. I hope what she did is a lesson to others that want to take the position that they cannot just do anything they want. And if they try, somebody living there is not going to let them get away with it. And now, let's read another fantastic story from our malicious compliance that you don't want to miss. Trust me on this one. This one is titled, "Take off my earphones while you are speaking to me." Sure, no problem, officer. So, this happened this morning. Even though I made a complete and full stop at a 4-way stop, I get pulled over by a police vehicle. Lights flashing, the works. I turn my dashcam around to face me, and whomever goes in front of the driver's side window. I roll it down and ask, "What seems to be the problem, officer?" The officer looks at me the way one would look at a sticky piece of gum stuck to the bottom of your shoe. "You didn't make a complete stop," he says. "I adjust one of my hearing aids. Lost part of my hearing due to being a touring session musician previously." And before he could speak, he firmly orders, "Sir, take off your earphones when I am talking to you." So then I take both hearing aids off and look at him. I can read lips a little, but we are both masked, so I cannot understand what he is saying. I communicate in sign language simultaneously while speaking verbally and say, "I am deaf and I didn't understand what you just said. Can you communicate to me in ASL, please?" He points at my hearing aids that look like AirPods, motioning me to put them on. I respond with, "Yes, officer. Without those, I can only communicate in ASL. Please instruct me in ASL, and I will be compliant in every way possible." He looks at the dashcam that is neatly pointed squarely at us and mumbles, "For Christ's sakes." He then motions for me to go, giving me 2 thumbs up. Needless to say, I rolled up the window and drove away as fast as legally allowed. I could not wipe the smile off my face all day. And yeah guys, thank you so much for watching.